Hey guys, how's everyone doing? This is our Jedi Sentinel, and welcome to the other half of my ranking for every episode of the Ncuti Gatwa era of Doctor Who. Now, I'm going through this introduction really fast because I kind of spelled everything out in the previous video. Like I said, Ncuti Gatwa's run consisted of 16 episodes, so I'm divvying this up into two lists. Last week, we looked at the bottom 8 worst episodes of his run. On a full list, that would be 9 to 16. So today, we are going to the other half of that list and looking at the top 8 best episodes of his run. Everything else you know, you've watched enough of my rankings, everything is my own opinions, two-parters count as one entry. That's not going to be a thing on this list because both of Ncuti's two-parters were on the worst episodes list. So without further ado, let's just get started. Kicking us off at the bottom of the list, number 8, Lucky Day. So this was an episode I was a little bit more sour on when I first watched it, especially seeing as how my friends reacted to it. They were not fans of this episode. But I've kind of come around to it. Although I will say, again, in regards to my friends, there is one major problem with it. So before I praise what this episode does really well, let's get the big issue out of the way. The weakest part of Lucky Day is the unit stuff. To kind of rehash what I said in that review, New Who looks on Unit with rose-colored glasses, especially Unit during the Third Doctor era, when the Doctor's exile was lifted and he started traveling time and space again. When he'd revisit Unit, it was a bit different, but during the Third Doctor era, but the primary focus of Unit was the Third Doctor era. And, to kind of circle back to what I was getting to, New Who looks at Unit with rose-colored glasses, just thinking, oh, it's this big staple of Doctor Who, and not really understanding the point of whenever Unit was in Doctor Who. A lot of the Doctor's relationship with New Unit, with Kate, with Osgood, with Shirley, it's all very buddy-buddy, very super friendly. But in the Third Doctor era, the Doctor's relationship with Unit was incredibly contentious. More often than not, their goals didn't align. The Doctor had one solution for what he thought was the best way to do things. The Brigadier had another solution for how he thought was the best way to handle things. And they would constantly butt heads. Often in stories where Unit was a main feature, either the primary antagonist of the story, the secondary antagonist of the story, or even the tertiary antagonist of the story would be the government. Like, Unit stories were meant to be critical of authority and the power structure, and New Who does not seem to get that. Lucky Day is trying to bring that back into things with Unit, being critical of Unit, having Unit operate in more of a moral gray area. But one, it never goes far enough, especially the way Kate chickens out at the end. And two, they are putting all of these criticisms into the mouth of the antagonist. So it just makes the criticisms of Unit ring hollow. It's like The Last Jedi, the way the hate-dumb, or people who don't understand movies, think the movie preaches a let the past die philosophy. Yeah, because when I have a message I want audiences to leave with and convey, I totally put it in the mouth of the villain. And that's what Pete McTeague did here. He put a lot of these legitimate criticisms of Unit as a structure, as an organization, in the mouth of the antagonist. And, like I just said, they ring hollow. But beyond that, this is another fantastic performance from Millie Gibson as Ruby Sunday. And Conrad is a surprisingly good antagonist. He was one of the best parts of Wish World, especially with what Wish World was talking about. The reality war is a different matter, but Wish World was looking at the dream world of right-wing ideology, and Conrad was not happy there. And also, again, American citizen in 2025, I'm all for anything that will just punch and tear down right-wing extremism and right-wing grifters. So, like I said in my review, Lucky Day is not a perfect episode. It's easily Pete McTeague's best. I'm not a fan of Pete McTeague, and given how bad Praxius and Kerblam are, that's saying something. But it is an episode that we really needed right now. Number 7, Boom. This is one of Stephen Moffat's much stronger episodes. Not one of my favorites. I still think that's Roll Enough in Time the Doctor falls, but this is a really good outing for him. A lot of people don't like this episode for the Moffatisms, but they don't really bother me, especially because, again, science fiction as political commentary, or just as political or social commentary, this episode has a lot to say about warfare motivated by religion, about the military-industrial complex, about capitalism, and the way these things intertwine. This is also one of Ncuti's better performances because it lets him slow down. By having him stuck on a landmine all story, up until this point, and for most of his run, Ncuti Gatwa is very energetic, very high octane, always running. This episode forces him to stop and slow down, and it lets us see another side of his doctor. Number 6, Rogue. The chemistry between Ncuti Gatwa and Jonathan Groff is great. I don't think the romance entirely lands, though, because I almost said Russell did not write this episode. The episode is trying to have an entire romantic arc for the Doctor and Rogue. A meet cute, a misunderstanding, a developing tension, a developing chemistry, a declaration, and then the devastating loss. It's like Davies, who again did not write the episode, but as the showrunner, he commissioned it. It's like Davies wanted to do his own take on River's song. The problem is, say what you will about River, she and the Doctor had the time to develop their own romance over the course of multiple episodes. I think that's why so many people really like The Husbands of River Song, because that finale, that send-off for River feels so well earned. And the problem is, Rogue is trying to do all of that in one episode. It is not enough time. It seemed like this, and from what I've heard, this wasn't the case. It was just meant to be a cameo. It seemed like Russell wanted to continue this storyline as hinted in Lucky Day, but now we know that's going to go nowhere. Rogue was a plot point for Ncuti, for the 15th Doctor. Whatever you're going to do with Billie Piper as 16, you cannot continue the Rogue story with her. I'm sorry. But yeah, I will end, the way I summed up my thoughts on Rogue. An 8-episode season of Doctor Who is not enough. I know most people say this term with negative connotations. They use it as a dirty word, but it is one thing I do kind of miss in longer television seasons. When you're not binging. They are not great for binging. But Rogue is a filler episode. And this season, this era of Doctor Who, desperately needed filler episodes. Number 5, Lux. So let's get the big criticism out of the way. There's a really insulting depiction of Doctor Who fans. Russell does not get the Doctor Who fandom. And also the segment where the Doctor and Belinda are briefly in Lux's world makes no sense. How is feeling sad adding a third dimension? Like I said in my review, Lux is a great episode. It's just an episode I have a lot of nitpicks with. But nitpicks are not major criticisms. They're nitpicks. And, Lux is really great. The effects work on Lux, on Mr. Ring-a-Ding is really good. Alan Cummings' performance is terrifying. Whether he's all hyper and perky or where he lets the facade drop. Ncuti and Virata Sethu are really establishing their chemistry and continuing to play off each other really well. This is one of Belinda's stronger episodes, which, again, given how how Series 15 completely dropped the ball with Belinda, is saying something. Her earliest episodes are her best, unfortunately. But yeah, just overall a good time. Lux would be higher, but honestly, I think structurally, when you break down the plot and look at the story beats it hits, It's just too structurally similar to another episode much higher on this list. Number 4, Dot and Bubble. Talk about sci-fi as a commentary. Wow. And just knowing what we know now about what the big twist of this episode is, when you go back and watch it, everything is recontextualized. Like, that first time watching it, you have the rug pulled out from under you. And the second time you watch it, you go, how did I not notice this? The signs were all there. Dot and Bubble is a brutal piece of storytelling. It is a teardown of social media, which I'm all for as someone on social media, but let's not get into that. Yeah, just overall, it takes your breath away. It is one of the highlights of the Ncuti Gatwa era. Like, these last 4 episodes, 4, 3, 2, and 1, I was going to say they're all perfect 10s, but that's not the case. Maybe 9s and 10s. Like, everything, honestly, up to this point, I would put around 6s and 7s on a quality scale. Yeah, 4 through 1 are 9s and 10s. Number 3, 73 Yards. This is an episode that really shows how audiences' tastes in media and how they consume media has shifted over the years. Because I think nowadays, modern audiences want all the answers. They want all the information spoon-fed into them. They want to peer behind the curtain and know how things work. But that wasn't always the case. There was a time when people appreciated, I should say, ambiguity, not getting those answers. Like Inception, did the top stop spinning? Was Leonardo DiCaprio awake or not? That's always the first one I go to. I'm trying to think of other really good examples that aren't fan theories, like Blade Runner, was Deckard a replicant or not? I'm not, again, that's more fan theory. I'm not getting into that. I'm trying to go for true ambiguity. The Sopranos, what happened to Tony? Things like that. Audiences don't like ambiguity the way they used to. And from what I've seen, the people who did not like 73 Yards are people who need answers, who crave answers. 73 Yards is Millie Gibson's best performance as Ruby Sunday. Having lost the Doctor, not knowing what's going on, having to go through her life and live with this looming presence, whatever the woman is, until we get our explanation, of course. It is the best case scenario of an episode working more on vibes than on logic. That's the best way I can think of to sum it up. Number 2, The Devil's Cord. You really should have seen this coming. I loved this episode. It's one of the episodes I revisit the most often. It's just a really fun episode. A lot of that is purely on the shoulders of Jinx Monsoon as the maestro. She gives this amazing, intense performance. She is one of the modern series' best villains that I don't ever want to see return. Because the effort the Doctor and Ruby put into defeating her, just bringing her back just bringing the Maestro back would diminish their threat as an antagonist. Kind of like how I felt about bringing Sutek back. But yeah, a lot of this is just squarely on the shoulders of Jinx Monsoon, who is amazing and terrifying as the Maestro, stealing every scene they're in. And it really helps that Ncuti Gatwa, in his performance, is terrified. He has never encountered anything like this. The Doctor doesn't know what he's dealing with. It harkens back to classic Who, because in New Who, if this were Tennant or Smith, they'd be very smug, very cocky, very arrogant. Because in Davies and Moffat's minds, the Doctor is God and no one can be a higher divinity than him. But no, like, I say that and I'm talking about a Russell T Davies episode. That's neither here nor there. But yeah, no, just it really sells the thread of the Maestro. That, like, in terms of comparison, this is a Tom Baker episode. This is a peak Tom Baker era episode. And I really have nothing more to say about that. Like, you saw me talk about this for the longest time. This was my favorite Ncuti Gatwa episode. But if you saw my reviews, you know the winds have shifted. Number 1, the best 15th Doctor episode. My favorite Ncuti Gatwa episode. The story and the engine. Again, in terms of what I like from narratives, what I like from fiction, this scratches an itch that I absolutely love. Stories about storytelling, about the importance of narratives, about why we tell stories, why we pass them down. I love that narrative, and this is just a really good way of doing that. As someone pointed out, it's a good way. What really helps the story in the engine is it talks about the importance of stories without going into the importance of the author, because there is a risk of doing a story like this where it becomes a vanity project for the writer and getting into the importance of the author. It's like, oh, the author is so important, and obviously their heads up their own ass about that. Excuse me, I try to be cleaner on my Doctor Who videos. But yeah, it so beautifully talks about storytelling. The stories are wonderfully depicted. The cast is all around amazing, especially the barber and Abina. And, you know, there are aspects of this that I'm sure I don't understand. Like, I like that it addresses the Doctor is now a black man. So he does not have the same perks and benefits that he had throughout his previous lives. People look at him differently now. But I'm a white man, so it's not something I can really get into. I can't go, oh, I relate to this, or oh, I understand this. Just from an outsider looking in, I like how this story addresses it. I also like the voice of this episode. You know, the most comparable episode I can make to this, the most apt comparison I feel I can make to this, is Vincent and the Doctor, where, you know, we had Richard Curtis, who is not a regular writer to Doctor Who. He came in from the outside and wrote this episode, Vincent and the Doctor, the way the writer here for The Story in the Engine wrote it. And the voice and perspective it brings is just so refreshing all around. It is a beautiful episode. And there you have it, my ranking of what I think the top 8 best episodes of Ncuti Gatwa's 15th Doctor are. What are yours? Go ahead and start a conversation in the comments below. And remember to like, comment, subscribe. Click the bell next to subscribe to get notifications when I upload. Share the video around. All of it helps my channel grow. And in the description box below is the link to my Bluesky where you can follow me and get updates on the channel. This is Sir Jedi Sentinel, and I will see you guys next time.